time, Israel and Iran are exchanging missile strikes for a ninth straight day. And it appears National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard has fallen out of favor with President Trump as he weighs possible U.S. military action against Iran. President Trump says Gabbard was, quote, wrong when she testified on Capitol Hill in March that Iran was not building a nuclear weapon. The president made that statement right in front of TV cameras.
What intelligence do you have that Iran is building a nuclear weapon? Your intelligence community has said they have no evidence that they are at this point.
Well, then my intelligence community is wrong. Who in the intelligence community said that?
Your director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard.
She's wrong.
To talk about the debate among the president's supporters and members of his cabinet over whether the U.S. should directly intervene in Iran and other stories in politics this week, we want to welcome Donna Crane. She's a political science professor and lecturer at San Jose State University. Good morning, Donna.
Good morning.
Well, we just heard it in the soundbite we just aired. President Trump calling his National Intelligence Director, Tulsi Gabbard, wrong. There was also the video that went viral this week of Senator Ted Cruz and Tucker Carlson sparring over the issue of intervening in Iran. What do you make of this very public disagreement among the president's supporters on this issue? And which group do you think the president will ultimately side with?
Okay, well, what we're seeing sort of in real time is that there's an exposed schism. There has always been this sort of awkward knitting together of the MAGA movement in terms of ideology. And one of the ways in which they disagree is that you have one camp, traditional Republicans, who have historically been more hawkish on foreign policy, more ready to use force. And then you have the newer members of the coalition, the MAGA movement, and those folks tend to be much more isolationist. And America has historically had strains of both in our population. And so they are now very directly poised against each other. And so this is one of the political factors President Trump is going to have to weigh in his decision.
Where do you think most of the president's base stands on this issue, on the non-interventionist, isolationist side?
I do think most of his base stands on the isolationist side. But, you know, there are other constituencies that he considers really important, namely Benjamin Netanyahu and some other more traditional conservatives who like the idea and have a decades-long interest in changing the regime in Iran. So I think those are the counter pressures. And
the president has said he's going to give it about 2 weeks to decide whether or not to step in militarily in Iran. Which way do you think he goes?
You know, I've been thinking so much about that. I think it's really, really hard to predict, but I can say, you know, for your viewers to sort of reach their own conclusions, I can say that what I think is happening is that there's an interesting alignment of interests here between Iran and President Trump. Now, for very different reasons, each of them wants a deal, right? Iran's military has been significantly degraded because of the strikes by Israel. And on the Trump side, you know, his brand is making deals. He has the chance to sort of come in and be the good cop to Benjamin Netanyahu's bad cop, if you will, especially since, you know, Trump decried the deal that we had with Iran when he took office the first time as inadequate. If he's able to emerge, you know, holding a piece of paper and with the narrative that he's averted war, that's a really good visual for him. So I think those two interests are potentially aligned.
And then there's the additional benefit of appealing to his base and staying out of the conflict militarily. Let's talk about the military presence closer to home. A 3-judge panel of the appeals court says that the president does have the right to take over the California National Guard and maintain control of those troops in Los Angeles. What effect do you think that ruling will have on future protests in Los Angeles and other cities?
Oh, I don't know that it has a lot of effect on the LA protests. I do think it sends a warning to other cities and states that, you know, this could be coming to their city next. My sense is that this week's events have been largely a win for President Trump. You know, I think the National Guard troops were unnecessary. The LA law enforcement community said they had things well in hand, but this is the visual that President Trump wanted, and I think he largely got it. And the added benefit for him is that he got it at the cost, if you will, of California Newsom, which he always, you know, loves to beat up on.
Last week, speaking of protests, when we spoke to you, you talked about some interesting research on what makes a protest and protest movement, quote unquote, successful. Based on that, what do you make of the No Kings protests that happened last week across the country? Does it check that box?
Yeah, so there were three criteria that research says makes protest really successful. And I think the No Kings rallies hit two, maybe two and a half of the three. So they were very large, much larger than even the organizers predicted. They were almost entirely nonviolent. They were peaceful, and in some cases even sort of fun. The ones I observed here in the Bay Area were peaceful and even wholesome, I would say. The third message, I would give it maybe a B minus. Sorry, the third criterion. And the third criterion is, do you have a clear message? And so there was a clear message, no kings. But what was missing from that message is, what's the call to action? You know, if I'm a member of Congress and I'm on the fence on some of these big questions before me and I see these protests, what is it you people want me to do? And so I think if the call to action, you know, it's been a week now, if it doesn't emerge very soon, then I think the energy around those protests, which were successful in and of themselves, could dissipate.
Especially since organizers are planning another day of demonstrations sometime next month. So you're saying they have to have that clear message locked in by
And
the
it
next
better
round.
be soon. It better be very soon.
Okay. So insightful as always. Thank you for the conversation this morning. Donna Crane, a political science lecturer and professor at San Jose State University. We always appreciate talking to you.
Thanks, Allie. Good morning.
All right. 8:48 is the time now, and we want to check in with Rosemary Orozco.